Good morning. This is November the 6th, 2019, here in the Executive Appointments Committee. I am Councilman Robert Stokes, Chairman of the committee. On my far left is Councilman Burnett from the 8th District, who's Vice Chair of this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To his far left is Councilman Cohen from the 1st District, member of the committee. To my far right is Ms. Marguerite Kern, who's this committee staff person from President Scott's office, Dominic McAlley. Also, we have Rebecca Sims from the President's office, City Council Attorney. Before we start, I would like for Katie Floyd to come up. She is the chairperson of the Anti-Animal Abuse Commission. She would like to give opening remarks on behalf of the nominees.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak. Again, my name is Katie Flory. I'm the chair of the Mayor's Anti-Animal Abuse Advisory Commission, and I am here today in support of my three amazing coworkers that would like to join the commission. All three of these women are extremely valuable to the work that the commission is doing, and I really hope that they will be confirmed and allowed to join the commission so that we continue to do the good work that we have been doing for the past several years. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Okay. Thank you very much.
Today we review the following nominations. For the Mayor's Anti-Animal Abuse Commission, our first nominee is Emily Hoover-Mail. You can grab the mic, and could you tell us some things about your background and your interest in the position and share your vision for the commission?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Emily Hovermail. I am the Maryland State Director for the Humane Society of the United States, which is the nation's largest animal protection organization. I've been in the position for the past 5 years, and during that time, I have consistently attended the meetings of the Mayor's Anti-Animal Abuse Commission and been an advocate for the animals in Baltimore City. I have been able to testify before this prestigious council on legislation related to the paraphernalia of animal fighting dogs and prohibiting that possession within the city, and also been an advocate at the State House for the animals in the state, including in Baltimore. I would very much appreciate all of the work that has been done by the city to increase the awareness of animal abuse and its serious repercussions. And I respectfully request a position on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Well, so I'll throw it out just as a
Councilman
something
Burnett.
Like, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess for all three of you to just remark positions on. One of the things that's come to my office a few times, sorry, I guess we're televised now, I need to talk into the mic, is this issue of dogs being neutered if they're found, like the dog gets out the yard, it actually belongs to someone, and I believe that within 24, 48 hours, if the owner doesn't find them, they're automatically given a surgical procedure. I'm not sure, we've gotten a lot of frustrating calls from folks about that, really angry calls about that. Obviously, I'm aware of sort of the rationale around breeding, but it just feels the lack of consent if the dog is chipped or has a tag that, that should be the first step, is getting in contact with the owner. So just if all could speak to that, not asking you to take strong positions one way or the other, but just want to know your thoughts. And then the second question I'm going to throw to all of you is this issue of deer management, and just a request that this board push Rec and Parks to come up with a plan, which we do not have right now at all, on how to manage the issue of deer, which is a huge issue. I have the largest park, or second largest park in the country in my district, bringing a tremendous amount of deer into the district, which obviously there's concerns for their well-being as well as other animals that could be exposed to Lyme disease. And so I ask that just all address both of those topics. Those are things that are particularly important to me as it relates to this board and sort of the role that it can play in city government on those issues.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember. And I think respectfully that the commission is really related to animal abuse, and I think those issues are somewhat tangential, but I'd be happy to talk about the issue with the neutering and everything. I think that is not the policy at Barks, the shelter, the open admission shelter, and animal control. I think it may be helpful to talk to the folks at Barks about what the policy is. I believe that if an animal is stray and if they are impounded, there is a period of time that is a legal period of time they have to be held in order to allow the owners to potentially reclaim them. And during that time, efforts are made to contact the owners, whether it's a microchip or whether it's with their license and their tag. And I think that to reclaim them, sometimes they have to agree to have them altered. Yeah, so I truly cannot speak too much to that. I think that's a policy at the city shelter at Barks, but I do understand what the consternation is, and I'd be happy to talk with them more about the policy and things of that nature. As regard to deer management, there are a lot of resources that are available, and I think that you're right that it's something that absolutely does need to be taken into consideration. There are a lot of groups out there that have expertise in this, and for example, the Humane Society of the United States, we do have a lot of resources for non-lethal deer management, and I'd be happy to talk with anyone from the Parks Department about that. I think that's all I can really speak to about that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the committee? Councilman Cohen?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for agreeing to serve. So this is sort of my somewhat pet issue, no pun intended, but there's a challenge in Patterson Park, and I think in a lot of parks in the city, with off-leash dogs. Mm-hmm. We see sort of this like weird cultural divide between people who feel entitled to have their dog off-leash and may have grown up in a more rural area or had experiences where that was just sort of the norm, and now are living in the city. Mm-hmm. And that's been an adjustment. We have a dog park, but this crowd of folks either opts not to use it or feels like they should still be able to have their dog off leash in the larger park. And it's created a lot of consternation among neighbors whose dogs have anxiety about other dogs coming up to them. In some rare instances, humans have been bit. But it's just become this like really weird issue that I didn't think I was going to spend a lot of time dealing with, but it's a real problem.
Right.
And it's impacting quality of life for humans and animals alike. And so similar to my colleague, would love to get your thoughts and then just your advocacy on pushing Rec and Park to really address it and come up with a plan, because I will say that they have been ambivalent or apprehensive about really enforcing. There are park rangers, but they are limited in what they can do. They can issue tickets, but they can't collect anyone's IDs. They don't have arrest power. We've tried to get animal control involved. They're starting to get involved. It's just been this really bizarre issue that is having a big impact on a relatively small group of people, but was hoping that you all would be able to play some sort of role in elevating it.
Yes, absolutely. And enforcement of existing leash laws is definitely something that is important for public safety for everyone. And I think that that is absolutely, the great thing about the commission is that there are representatives from diverse areas of the government, of the city government, including animal control, the police, and others. And I think you're absolutely right. It's something that should be raised and make sure that every area of the city that there is safe and that there's enforcement of the existing animal control laws that are out there, including leashing dogs whenever they are outside of the custody of their home. So yes, absolutely, I agree. And I think that it's something that we should all work on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge from the 14th District, Councilwoman Clark, who's a part of the committee also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies for being late.
Do you have any questions, Councilwoman?
I just want to say that, of course, I've read through these wonderful resumes, and I love the Humane Society.
Thank you.
Anyone coming out of there is just tops in my book, because I taught a lot at Hopkins, undergraduate stuff, and I did conferences for Hopkins. I had to go out of town and go up to some Hopkins campus on Route 70 or something like that and stay. And I did week-long work with the Humane Society people for several years, for like a week's course in all kinds of things. So I got to meet a lot of people there and to get to know them. And it's just a great organization. I'm so glad that you're joining us with the strangest named committee in the world, the anti-animal abuse. Really important group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Apologies.
Thank you. Our next nominee, thank you, is Ms. Darcy Phelan Emmerich.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Darcy Phelan Emmerich. I've been a resident of Baltimore City since 2003, and I'm so pleased to be here today. I'll tell you about my professional background, but I'm here to serve in a personal capacity on this commission. So professionally, I serve as the chief epidemiologist for the Baltimore City Health Department, and I'm also a full-time faculty member at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And so I believe the skills that I've gained through my professional training, going through a master's degree and a doctoral degree, looking at data and generating evidence, those skills will become very helpful in my service on the commission. But again, I want to reinforce that I'm here in a personal capacity. I've been a very strong animal advocate for the last 19 years. I've been a vegetarian for the last 19 years. I make donations to the Humane Society, adopted my cat from the Maryland SPCA, have also supported the Animal Legal Defense Fund, and feel very strongly against animal abuse. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to be considered as part of this commission. In terms of the questions that the council members proposed about the dog neutering, I don't know much about that. I'm happy to learn more. It's my understanding that it's probably a policy that has to do between animal control at the health department as well as the city shelter barks. And so I would definitely suggest that talking to both of those groups could probably help clear up any misunderstandings, but it sounds like it is an issue that does upset people. As well as the deer management and the parks in the city, it sounds like the Humane Society has some resources that could be helpful for that, but I do understand that that can be an issue given the large size of the park in particular. And then with respect to the Patterson Park off-leash dogs, it does sound like that's a touchy subject, and that's something maybe that the health department, animal control, could work with Parks and Rec about, to probably maybe decide to work together on some kind of collaborative plan to address. But I completely understand. I live in District 1 next to Joseph Lee Park, and so we see that as well, that lots of people walking their dogs on the leash, but then some off the leash, which can create anxiety for everybody involved.
Thank you. I also want to mention that Councilman Schleifer, he's a part of the committee, he is stuck in traffic, so if he's not here. Any questions from the committee?
No, I just
Thank-
think, may I just say that I think it's
Councilwoman,
great
can
to
you use the
have-
mic? Councilwoman, can you use the mic?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. I think it's great to have you on that organization. It's quite a lively crowd, the Anti-Animal Abuse Committee, and very helpful and influential on legislation as well. So we'll be cruising by for comments when and if we ever have animal legislation. And it'll be good to have you there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilwoman. I'm really excited to bring my skills with data and evidence and
Yeah.
research to the work of the commission.
Very helpful.
Thank you. Councilman Cohen?
Yeah, to reiterate, thanks for being willing to serve. I think sort of across our city, we are, at least this city council is starting to embrace more of a public health approach in a lot of the work that we're doing. My colleague who chairs the health committee just held a hearing on looking at gun violence as a public health issue. And so to reiterate what my colleague Councilwoman Clark said, I'm really excited to have you bring a epidemiology and a public health background into this work, because I think that all of us are really looking to public health and to taking an evidence-based approach and to trying to resolve some longstanding issues, whether it's with violence, whether it's how we view animals through that lens. So excited to have you being part of this work.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to acknowledge Councilman Slifer, who was stuck in traffic, who's part of this committee. Do you have any questions, Councilman? No. I know you just walked in. Okay. Thank you.
I'm great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
next nominee is Lisa Randolph. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be considered for this position. Good morning, everyone. I have been president and chairman of Maryland Votes for Animals since April of 2015. I've testified before this body before on the animal dogfighting paraphernalia bill that passed here and that we got passed the states. We have over 5,000 members at Maryland Votes for Animals. I've been a Baltimore City resident, although I am currently not, but I was for 6 years and am a native Baltimorean, and feel that we bring, by being a member of this committee and having attended almost every meeting since 2015, I feel that we bring Baltimore City's voice to state legislation, which I think is very important. And really looking forward to working with everybody and taking the concerns that you mentioned, talking about the leashing, which I think does sound like something that we need to investigate and we need to talk through. The issue of deer management is something that my colleague Emily Hovermail and Humane Society is very familiar with, but we're always willing to talk about that. I have had legislators from Baltimore City in Annapolis talk to me about deer management, so I am familiar with that. As for the neutering issue, I'm not sure also what BARC's policy is, but we do work very closely with them, and definitely am looking forward to having that conversation.
There's some list of questions.
I have a question. My colleague both of them talked about the leasing issue. Is there a law that said a dog, if they're off a leash, has to have a muzzle on? Because you can see people getting a little uncomfortable when they see a dog running around and he's just loose, he's not on a leash. You don't know what that dog, actually, somebody walking down the street don't know what that dog might do. So I just was wondering, ask that question because I didn't know that.
Well, thank you for that question. Currently, to my knowledge, there is not such a law that you have to muzzle dogs. But certainly if a dog appears dangerous, that's something that would be an animal control issue to discuss.
May I come up?
Yeah.
Sure.
Our chairman.
Hello again. So a couple of things with that. There is not currently a law that says if your dog is off leash, they have to be muzzled. Now, could be a potential law that if for some reason, let's say an off-leash dog bit another animal, bit a person, they then could be taken by animal control and there would be a hearing, which is the dangerous dog hearing. During that hearing, they could come back and say, from now on, when your dog is out in the community, it must be muzzled as a way to protect the community, but also as a way for that person to keep that animal. That's the only known law when it comes to muzzles that I am aware of. The other thing I would like to mention is when it comes to the spay and neuter policy. I am fairly familiar with that policy, and it is my understanding that yes, if an animal is found running at large, they will have to be spayed and neutered. And this is a bigger issue that I recommend we talk to BARCs and to animal control with. On the advocacy side of things, I can tell you that it's also a public health issue when we have animals running at large. We know that one of the biggest reasons that animals do run at large is because they are not spayed and neutered. If they are spayed and neutered, it will cut down on the number of animals that we are seeing running at large, which means that the number of animals that barks or animal control needs to pick up, and the amount of bites that we may be seeing in the community. So it is a large issue. I think we all see both sides of it, and we have to find a middle ground between the two. I also want to reiterate what Emily said. We are the Anti-Abuse Advisory Commission, so it isn't necessarily under our privy, but it is something we can definitely make sure that animal control in the city and that Barks is aware of, so that we can continue to talk about it and see if there's a way that we can find a middle ground.
Thank you. Did you want to finish? I don't know if you want to finish.
I just wanted to say that I think it is very important to be a part of the commission, because when we bring the voice of Baltimore City into the state, and the people that come and testify and the kinds of legislation that happens in Baltimore City often do, as the dogfighting implements do, Bill, when it does go statewide. So having that boots on the ground experience as a volunteer at Maryland SPCA and being here in Baltimore City, it is important for us to bring Baltimore's voice to Annapolis.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Cohen, you have a question?
Yeah, first off, appreciate your willingness to serve. This is a really well-rounded group, and having some lobbying muscle will be really good, I think. I did want to just really quickly to the off-leash dogs. I do think there is a law on the books for that. I'm looking at the city code under Rec and Park. All dogs must be on a leash 8 feet or less when entering or leaving the fenced dog run area. Any dog found off leash outside of an established fenced dog run or off leash area will be subject to Baltimore City leash laws and associated fines. I believe the fine is $240 per infraction. I know there is some discretion there, but I did just want to clarify, because this comes up for me a lot.
Yes, there is absolutely a law that animals may not be off leash. What I was referring to in answering the question is there is not a law that says if you're going to have your dog off leash, they have to have a muzzle. The law is, yes, you have to have your dog on leash at all times, unless there's a specific dog park that is confined where that animal is allowed. And yes, there are fines for that. It can be, I know, a struggle for animal control and for Parks and Rec to actually find the dog, find the owner.
Right.
So again, it gets a little bit challenging, but yes, every dog should be on leash at all times, and there is a law for that.
Yep, just wanted to be clear
Yes.
on that point. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say one final thing, and I think I'm speaking probably for all of my colleagues here, but one of the things that's very important is the link between animal abuse, elder abuse, child abuse, and domestic abuse. And so we feel very strongly that the work that's done on the commission is important, because we can't just be siloed in terms of animals. It filters out into the community, and we saw this, Emily and I, we were testifying last year on the sexual abuse bill, the animal sexual abuse bill that passed, that people who had suffered domestic abuse would come up to us, who had been testifying on other bills about protective orders for domestic abuse, and would say, please pass this bill, because this is like the early warning signal. If we can stop animal abuse into the wider community, you would be surprised possibly the things that we could be preventing.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For our last nominee, this is for the Commission on Sustainability, Delegate Regina Boyce.
Good morning. Thank you so much. For the record, Regina T. Boyce, resident of the 14th District, delegate of the 43rd District, and first and foremost, congratulations to the other nominees here, and thank you, Sustainability Commission, for allowing me to have this opportunity to serve. I would say that my background and experience is personal. You know, my my interesting memory about just whether it's environmental factors was, I'm not originally from Baltimore. I grew up in Rockville, born in DC, and I remember, we caught the bus a lot. I remember being at the bus stop with my aunt, and my favorite pink belt broke. It was a pink belt with hearts as little knots, and it broke, and I remember the bus was coming, and it broke, and I was holding it, and I remember my aunt telling me to throw it down. And I remember saying, no. She said, throw it down. I said, like, we thought about it. I'm a little kid. After all, it is my aunt. And she asked me to throw it down. And that, I don't know why, that has stuck with me ever since. So I'm highly conscious about what we throw away, where it goes, why it goes, and what more we can do. Personally, I practice as much sustainability as possible. I not only recycle, I do compost, so I have little to no waste. And what that shows me in my personal life is that if we can get our city not only recycling, but composting, we would have less that we are taking to an incinerator, but most importantly, we can create an industry for our city that is sustainable, right? Because we're always going to have waste. But at the same time, how are we cutting down on not only single-use waste, single-use plastics, and most importantly, cheap materials that are contributing to our waste? You know, we've got these quick things here, even with our cell phones, you know, they break every 2 years so that you can buy the next thing. And so how do we create sustainability through quality? Because quality things last. And so it's always been a personal interest of mine, a personal practice of mine. I don't get it right all the time, but I'm ready to, as I've been in the city and I've seen not only the trash and the waste and what more we can do, I want to be a part of a body that is talking about these things, whether it's food waste, whether it's the amount of trash we have, whether it's plastic bags, and I know everyone has a different feeling about that, what we can do to cut down on these things that cut down on our trash and our litter, but create some more sustainable society. And so those are the things that I'm interested in. And also I'm on the Environment and Transportation Committee at the state level. And so bringing what we create and what we work on here at the state level to make you know, systematic change for not only Baltimore City, but for the state of Maryland.
Any questions from the committee? Councilwoman Clark?
Well, I'm just so pleased that Delegate Boyce is joining Sustainability Commission. As far as I am concerned, it is the most, nothing against the animals, but it is so active, relevant, and is becoming the center of the whole zero waste effort here in local government.
Yes.
So I'm a zero waste person. I'm not composting yet. I haven't got
We'll
my...
get you there.
I know, I'm going to. We just had a whole like humongous discussion the other day at the Sustainability HQ about the fact that food waste is 25% of our entire trash
Scary.
disposal. So if we can, you know, melt it down to whatever, fertilizer, then praise the Lord, because that's 25%. So you are just made to be there, and you are going to love it, and they're going to love you, and they're all sitting there to make sure you don't escape. And we are so pleased. And this is my delegate, so I get to say all those words. She's wonderful. She's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for your willingness to serve. You know, I think to echo my colleague's point, I think this Sustainability Commission and the larger climate crisis facing our city, our country, and our world is the issue. You know, I want my daughter to be able to grow up in a world where she can breathe, and where Southeast Baltimore, where we live, isn't completely flooded, and we are a city that's on the water, and we will, and already have, felt the impacts of climate change immediately. And I'm glad, because of the leadership of Councilwoman Clark and others, that this has really been an issue that's been elevated, banning styrofoam, both at the city and then state level, the plastic bag ban, just the work that I think all of us are starting to do. And so I appreciate kind of your approach and the story you told about throwing out that belt. I'm curious, just from your perspective, how do we kind of integrate this issue around sustainability and climate change and the importance of protecting our planet in the context of Baltimore? Because I sometimes think
Yep.
the sort of urban issues and environmental issues exist in silos,
Yes.
and they're not.
Right.
They're
Yeah,
inextricably connected. And so I'm curious how you would think about how do we do a better job of connecting those issues and really educating our kids, the public, on why, whether it's composting, whether it's recycling, whatever it is, these small personal choices have a huge impact if we extrapolate over 600,000 people in a city.
Thank you so much, Councilman Cohen. I think we have to hit ground level. And so oftentimes I look at places or agencies like DPW, and I think you have 6 liaisons, right? And we tend to have a lot of issues, for instance, over in West Baltimore. And rather than having 5 people, for instance, spread out across the city, it's maybe we take 6 months with those 5 people and hit the ground and really educate people. So the story I always tell is, I guess it was in 2008 when the past mayor implemented single stream. I was a very long line at Lake Montebello, and it was cold, and I waited 45 minutes to buy that yellow can. But I was the only person recycling on my block. And so I got a grant through a nonprofit organization, and I talked to each one of my neighbors, and it's like, if I get you this yellow can, will you recycle? They said yes. I got the grant. I got the recyclable bins. I've got the paper to show them what goes in it and what doesn't go in it. Every one of my neighbors recycled, right? And so it's a matter of like not only will, but groundwork. I think one of the most impactful things for me is just through this time of learning more about this, looking at where all this stuff actually goes, right? And I always tell people, when you drop that piece of trash on the ground does not open up and swallow it, right? It stays there, and really telling people where this goes and why it's important. Because I've heard stories of DPW going to Orthodox Jews' house, putting a tarp down on the kitchen floor and dumping out the trash and showing them what is recycled and what goes into the trash. So I think we have to do the groundwork and really talk to people that this is not some like new urbanized cool thing to do. We're doing this because we want to be here in the next 10, 15, 20, 100 years, but we won't do that. If you want to talk about our water, if you want to talk about not seeing when you're at the harbor, riding my bike around and you see that pack of trash, we can't have a Mr. Trash Wheel forever, right? We can't have 2 of them. The point is not to have this stuff to keep cleaning up every day. At some point, we don't want to have a Mr. Trash Wheel. We don't want to have it. So I think we have to just really educate people at the very ground level. And I think we have to just start saying what investments are we willing to make, right? And so are we going to sell these recycling bins if we really want people to recycle, or are we going to give them away? We have to really talk about what's important, and if this is what we want, if this is the game, then we have to make some investment on our end as well. And so, like I said, it's a simple story. I think it was $1,000, but once I gave it to them, they did it because everybody wanted the shiny, yellow can. Doesn't matter whose mayor's name is on it, they wanted the can. And so because, as we know, DPW would take the box or take the self-made recycling bin, so everybody wanted the shiny bin, and so give it away. At the school level, the curriculum is every morning we walk around the school and we pick up trash. Maybe that then creates a culture to then pick up trash at home, or say, hey, we don't do that around here. Just put it in a trash can, right? And so I think we have to teach at the ground level, that you're not creating a job for somebody because you're throwing a piece of trash down. You're really just hurting our community. I used to clean my block every week for a decade, and I had to stop after a while because I was the only person doing it, right? Why isn't anybody helping me with the work? And so because you're doing it, and then it gets to be, how can you join me in the work? And after a while, my neighbors would be like, Regina, what are you doing? I was like, just clean up over here. I'm coming over there. Give me a minute. I'm coming over there, right? And so people started joining me in the work because they had already bought in. We had already been helping each other. I have been a neighbor. So really being neighborly, getting it down to the ground level, teaching our kids not in school as well, where does trash go? Why isn't it important? And maybe if they have to do it themselves, it becomes something that becomes ingrained to them because they're only doing sometimes what they see they're doing. So I just think we just need to do a better groundswell job of showing. And I know the councilman, I see his Instagram posts all the time, working with the community, cleaning up with the community, because it's going to get to the point where, you know, they'll be cleaning up without Councilman Burnett, right? Because that's what he's creating. He's, you know, and so how do we create that to the point where, you know, in my block, when my grass was too high, my neighbors be like, yo, I cut your grass because you was making us look bad. Thank you so much. Right? Like, so we're taking care of each other because we know what the standard is, and we all want to meet the standard, but we're helping each other meet that standard. So I've talked too much, but yeah.
Delegate, I just want to mention something that you said. The DPW liaison, and I've said this in front of Mr. Rudy Child, because when they go to meetings, they always talk about bulk trash. The issue is the bulk trash. They never have the liaison talk about how we get more people in Baltimore City recycle, because we at 14%. That's horrible in Baltimore. We can do better than that. About a year ago, I introduced a bill about recycling, but I did not put in that particular resolution about our school system. Our young people, they have cups and straws. Are they recycling in the classroom, in the high school level, and elementary school level? And I'd like to work with you to make that happen, but I think we need to take communities to the landfills and let them see exactly if you don't recycle, actually what it look like, even our young kids from elementary school and high school. So I just throw that out there to you, and let's make that happen.
I think that's awesome. I think you're right. Seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. You know, like, this is where it goes. And don't you think this is disgusting? Like, shouldn't we cut down on this? But I think, again, this goes back to, you know, in order to have everyone have access to certain things, whether it's fast fashion or the next little gadget, we have to get out of the habit of selling cheap products and cheap items and cheap plastics contribute to our trash. And I think, yes, seeing is believing, and if that is something you certainly want to work on, I'm happy to work on. But I go back to one of the things you pointed out. I think it is not for a lack of services that our city is dirty. It's a lack of our residents knowing that those services exist. Every community has a bulk trash day. 3 items. You can get rid of that couch, those tires, those mattresses. There's these services, and in places, again, where there's the most chronic issues, there's no reason why there's not a groundswell there to educate folks and let them know, like, it doesn't have to be this way, and here's how it doesn't have to be this way, and here are the services. You know, here are the services. Our job is to empower people and let them know about the services and the knowledge that we have, and we're not passing that on. We're just here for show.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Thank you. There is no public testimony, so we will be taking a vote. Is there a motion to recommend Emily Hooverville? Motion made by Councilman Burnett, second by Councilwoman Clark. Stokes is a yes. Councilman Burnett? Yes. Councilman Burnett is a yes. Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Schleifer?
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Councilman Schleifer abstain. Is there a motion to recommend Darcy Phelan Emmerich?
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Burnett, second by Councilwoman Clark. Stokes is a yes. Councilman Burnett?
Yes.
Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Schleifer? Yes. Is there a motion to recommend Lisa Radoff?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilwoman Clark, second by Councilman Burnett. Councilman Stokes is a yes. Councilman Burnett?
Yes.
Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Schleifer? Is there a motion to recommend the Honorable Regina T. Boyce?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilwoman Clark, second by Councilman Cohen. Councilman Stokes is a yes. Councilman Burnett?
Yes.
Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Schleifer? All motions passed. The committee will recommend a favorable report for all nominees. The nomination will be placed on second reader on Monday, November the 18th, 2019. The full council will review and take a vote at that time. On behalf of the mayor and the city council of Baltimore, I would like to thank all of you for your willingness to give your time and efforts to serve the citizens of Baltimore. If there's no other business, the committee is adjourned, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.